The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie, silvery glow over the weathered facade of Fairview Hospital. The building loomed like a dark sentinel against the night, its windows black and empty like soulless eyes. Sarah and John, seasoned investigators of the paranormal, stood at the entrance, their breath visible in the crisp night air. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant howl of wind and the rustling of leaves in nearby trees. The tales of ghostly apparitions and inexplicable phenomena that surrounded the hospital had drawn them here, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was said to be perilously thin. Sarah clutched her flashlight tightly, its beam cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. Her heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. John adjusted his equipment methodically, his senses alert to any hint of the supernatural that might linger within. He could feel the weight of the stories they had heard pressing down on him, the tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena that made Fairview a place of fear and fascination. As they stood there, steeling themselves for what lay ahead, the oppressive silence seemed to whisper warnings they were too determined to heed. They stepped cautiously into the lobby, the floorboards groaning under their weight. The grand entrance hall, once a bustling center of activity, was now a cavern of decay. Shadows danced ominously in the corners, seemingly alive with unseen movement. Dust motes floated lazily in the narrow beams of their flashlights, lending an otherworldly quality to the air. The scent of mildew and age filled their nostrils, mingling with the faint, lingering odor of antiseptic. Sarah's pulse quickened with each step deeper into the abandoned hospital, the weight of its history pressing down on her shoulders. John's gaze swept over the surroundings, his trained eye searching for signs of the paranormal amidst the decay and neglect that surrounded them. The oppressive silence was occasionally broken by distant, unidentifiable noises that only heightened their sense of unease. The walls seemed to whisper, carrying echoes of the past that had seeped into the very fabric of the building. The oppressive atmosphere of the place was palpable, a heavy cloak that seemed to wrap around them, warning them to turn back. Inside the children's ward, remnants of innocence clashed starkly with the pervasive sense of abandonment. Tiny beds stood in neat rows, their metal frames rusted and sagging under the weight of years. Sarah meticulously positioned a camera on a cracked bedside table, its lens capturing the eerie stillness of the room. Nearby, John adjusted an audio recorder, the soft hum of machinery filling the air with a disconcerting undertone. The walls were adorned with faded murals of whimsical animals, their once cheerful visages now distorted by time and neglect. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she worked, an uneasy feeling of being watched causing her to glance over her shoulder into the darkened corners of the room. The temperature seemed to drop perceptibly, a chilling reminder of the presence that seemed to linger just beyond their sight. The rustle of unseen movements and the distant sound of children's laughter sent shivers down their spines. As they completed their setup, the room seemed to grow colder, the very air thickening with an unseen presence. Moving deeper into the hospital's labyrinthine corridors, they encountered unmistakable signs of its dark past. The walls were marred with stains that hinted at long-forgotten tragedies. In the operating room, rusted surgical instruments lay scattered on a stained metal tray, their edges dulled with age and neglect. John's flashlight flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls like phantoms. The gurney in the center of the room was tipped on its side, a dark stain marring its surface. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as they explored further, the metallic scent of old blood and antiseptic hanging heavy in the stagnant air. An unsettling sense of unease settled over them, intensified by the unexplained noises that echoed through the empty hallways. The sound of distant footsteps, the faint echo of a child's cry, and the soft hum of whispered voices surrounded them. They exchanged uneasy glances, silently acknowledging the malevolent presence that seemed to coil around them like a serpent in the darkness. The oppressive atmosphere grew thicker with each step, as if the very walls were closing in, drawing them deeper into the hospital's sinister embrace. As they delved deeper into their investigation, Fairview Hospital seemed to awaken with spectral activity. Doors creaked open of their own accord, revealing empty rooms that pulsed with residual energy. Shadows flitted and darted along the walls, defying rational explanation. Sarah's heart raced in her chest, her senses heightened by the eerie phenomena unfolding around them. John's voice trembled slightly as he spoke into the audio recorder, capturing faint whispers and disembodied footsteps that echoed through the darkness. The temperature plummeted suddenly, a bone-chilling cold that made their breath mist in front of them. Undeterred by fear, they pressed on, determined to uncover the mysteries that lurked within Fairview Hospital's haunted halls. The walls seemed to close in on them, the oppressive atmosphere growing more intense with each step they took. The sound of distant sobbing echoed through the corridors, growing louder and more anguished with each passing moment. It felt as if the hospital itself was alive, a malevolent entity that sought to ensnare them within its haunted grasp. In a moment of chilling realization, John turned to speak to Sarah, only to find her gone. Panic seized his chest as he called out her name, his voice echoing desperately through the deserted corridors. Sarah's flashlight lay abandoned on the floor, its beam casting elongated shadows that seemed to reach out to him. Heart pounding in his ears, John retraced their steps frantically, searching for any sign of her presence amidst the oppressive silence. But the hospital remained eerily still, a labyrinth of empty rooms and echoing passageways that offered no clues to her whereabouts. The oppressive silence was only broken by the occasional creak and groan of the old building, each sound making John's heart race faster. His mind raced with terrifying possibilities, each more horrifying than the last. The sense of isolation and dread grew stronger, wrapping around him like a suffocating shroud. The shadows seemed to close in on him, their dark tendrils reaching out to pull him into the unknown depths of Fairview's haunted halls. John's desperation mounted as he followed a faint sound, a soft whimper coming from down the hall. He found Sarah huddled in a darkened room, her eyes wide with terror. She whispered about a presence that had chased her, its cold breath on her neck. As John tried to comfort her, a chilling realization set in. The hospital was not just haunted. It was alive with malevolent forces that had no intention of letting them leave. The walls seemed to close in on them, the air growing colder and more oppressive by the second. Every shadow seemed to pulse with malevolence, and the faint whispers became a cacophony of tortured voices. The room seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the walls closing in as if to swallow them whole. Sarah's hands clutched at John's arm, her fear palpable. The sense of impending doom was overwhelming, as if the very air was charged with the spirits of the tormented souls trapped within the hospital's walls. The oppressive presence grew stronger, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. With renewed determination, John and Sarah attempted to confront the malevolent force haunting the hospital. They returned to the children's ward, where the atmosphere felt charged with an unseen energy. Equipment malfunctioned, lights flickered, and the air grew thick with an ominous presence. Sarah called out to the spirits, demanding answers, while John recorded every moment, hoping to capture irrefutable evidence of the supernatural. But the spirits did not respond kindly. Instead, the room grew unbearably cold, and a sense of dread enveloped them. The walls seemed to whisper, and shadows grew darker and more menacing. The temperature dropped further, causing their breath to form clouds in front of their faces. The oppressive presence seemed to press down on them, filling the room with a tangible sense of malevolence. The spirits seemed to close in on them, their anger and pain palpable in the air. The room seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the walls closing in as if to swallow them whole. Sarah's voice trembled as she called out to the spirits, pleading for them to reveal themselves. In their pursuit of answers, they uncovered the hospital's dark history. They learned of Dr. Jacob Reynolds, a sadistic doctor who conducted cruel experiments on patients, leaving behind a legacy of suffering and death. The spirits of those who perished under his care now roamed the halls, seeking justice and revenge. As Sarah and John pieced together the fragments of the hospital's gruesome past, they realized that the spirits were not just restless, they were vengeful. The malevolent force they had felt was the collective anger and pain of the tortured souls trapped within the hospital's walls. The horrific revelations seemed to seep into their minds, intensifying their fear. The sense of impending doom grew stronger, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. The shadows seemed to close in on them, their dark tendrils reaching out to pull them into the unknown depths of Fairview's haunted halls. Determined to escape, Sarah and John made a final, desperate attempt to leave the hospital. But the malevolent spirits had other plans. As they neared the exit, the doors slammed shut with a deafening bang, and the lights went out. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, and the oppressive darkness seemed to swallow them whole. Their flashlights flickered and died, leaving them in pitch-black terror. Sarah screamed, her voice echoing through the corridors, but there was no response. John tried to break down the door, but it was as if the hospital itself had sealed them in. The sense of impending doom was overwhelming, as if the very walls were closing in on them. The oppressive silence was only broken by the occasional creak and groan of the old building, each sound making their hearts race faster. The shadows seemed to close in on them, their dark tendrils reaching out to pull them into the unknown depths of Fairview's haunted halls. Days later, a search team found their equipment scattered and abandoned. The recordings captured Sarah's final, desperate cries and John's futile attempts to escape, but there was no trace of them. Fairview Hospital stood silent and empty once more, its dark secrets and vengeful spirits waiting for the next unwitting souls to wander into its haunted halls. The mystery of Sarah and John's disappearance remained unsolved, another chilling tale to add to the legend of Fairview Hospital, a place where the living and the dead were bound by an unbreakable curse. The chilling end to their investigation served as a grim reminder of the power of the supernatural forces that haunted the hospital, their malevolent presence a testament to the suffering and death that had occurred within its walls.